Now that we've performed our unfold function, we're going to move from the 3D view to the 2D parts layout view to organize our parts. Before we start breaking the parts down and maximizing the part size, we're going to shift the parts to more clearly see the symmetry with them. We want to try to maintain the symmetry as much as possible. We've got a symmetrical 3D model, and we want the parts to be symmetrical so that when you're building half of this half of the paper, you're doing the same things on this half of the paper, and what this will allow the paper assembler to do is minimize the chances of anything differentiating this side from this side. Again, it's easier to get put together, and it minimizes any chances for distortions or skew with the model. So before we start manipulating our 2D view model, I want to share some shortcuts to speed things along. If I right click on the view over here, we can see there's some control and key button shortcuts that we can do to move between the different functions we're going to be using. You got the select and move the parts, rotate the parts, join, disjoin the faces, so that'll join up the edges or cut the edges. And then we've got the edit flaps, where we can flip-flop where the flaps are from one edge to the other edge of our defined open edges. So those shortcuts are all great and fine, but they require you to look down at your keyboard and click 2 buttons per function. To speed that along, we're going to go to Settings, Other Settings, the Keyboard Shortcuts tab. In here, it allows you to actually specify your own shortcuts for those functions. What I like to do is use the ASDF keys on my keyboard, and I tie those to select and move, rotate part, join, disjoin face, and edit flap. And in this manner, I'm right-handed, so I use my right hand on the mouse. So I move my right hand around on the mouse. I take my left hand and I place my pinky, ring, middle, and forefinger on ASDF without any modifiers, so I can quickly, with one button keystrokes, switch between the different functions. If I click OK and type A with my pinky finger, I can click and select and move around pieces. If I press and hold the control button, I can select multiple pieces, and then I can release control and move those around. In the same manner, I can create bounding boxes by just left clicking and creating a box to select multiple pieces. Then if I hit the S button with my ring finger, it brings up the rotate parts function, where I can select a vertice and rotate about that axis. If I keystroke the D, it creates the join disjoin function, and I can join up pieces and disjoin them. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that, and then with my forefinger I keystroke F, and it brings up the prompt to flip-flop my flaps. And I can run through and do that, and so in that way I can switch through the different functions fairly quickly without having to look down, so it speeds along the time to perform the unfold. Okay, so now on to our objective number 2, which is to roughly lay out our pieces in order to be able to see the symmetry. Already you can see, so right now our pieces are larger, our parts are larger than the layout of our pages. We don't care so much about that right now. We're going to leave them as large as they are. I'm going to press A here to do my select and move. So I'm just going to go ahead and line up all these pieces. In order to be able to see the symmetry with the 2D parts layout. So this is going to help us as we're doing something to one half of the model. We will do it to the other half at the same time, and it will be fairly straightforward, as opposed to if the parts were strewn about all over the 2D layout view. It'd be more difficult to keep things as consistent. If you have I recommend using a mouse with the middle mouse key to be able to easily click and drag around both the 2D and 3D layouts, as well as a scroll wheel to be able to zoom in and out, again on both the 2D and 3D viewports. Now we actually have a fair amount of small pieces. Again, the end goal will be to join these up to create larger pieces or parts. For now, we'll get the medium-sized ones kind of laid out like that. We'll actually try to connect some of these up right now. So I'm going to click my D key, which is the join, just join. We're just going to try a few things out and see if we can. So when I do that, if I click this piece, it brings in its adjoining piece. So I know that goes there. I'm just going to click this one to get that one on that piece, on that part there. Do the same thing here. We see that goes there. Can't fit that there because it's overlapping. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo this because I'm seeing that these pieces join up with these pieces. So I should say these parts. So for the time being, I'm just going to make those a little bigger than they were. This one might have to remain where it is. Maybe we grab those smaller pieces there. Maybe we grab those smaller pieces. Here again, we're joining these smaller pieces up into larger pieces. Here I'm noticing these are part of the dial, so I'm going to throw those by the rest of what I know to be the dial. I'm going to cut this so that these parts can be symmetrical. Again, I know these curved surfaces, and when I select them here, they highlight on the 3D view, so you can use that to your advantage to know what pieces you're looking at. I'm going to leave all those little pieces alone. Here's the inner piece of the nose. Double click there. It's connecting up to the raised strip of the nose. I should say I'm double clicking when I'm doing my join just join. I'm double clicking to bring that in. So in this manner we've more or less moved things around so that we can clearly see. We drew an imaginary line down the middle here, and here we can see the symmetry from side to side. Symmetry from side to side, side to side. Click once, control, click again, symmetry from side to side, and so forth. Now before we complete this objective, what I'm going to do, again, all in the service of symmetry, we have these tabs that when we did our unfold, they alternate from edge to edge. I don't really want that. I want the edges also to be, or excuse me, I want the tabs to also be symmetrical, again, so that when you're building from one side to the other side, you're performing the same kinds of gluing and folding. So I will go through. I've keystroked F to bring up the flap edit tool. Same thing if you did Control F or right clicked and select edit flaps. Again, the F key shortcut helps to speed things along. So I'll just move it, so I'll just edit all the flaps so that they're consistent from side to side. And when I'm doing this, I'm trying to move all the flaps. If there's a thinner strip, I'll move the flaps to the thinner strip, because if I bring the join just join tool in and then I unclick it here, I want the flap to be on the thinner side so that there's more space when I'm going to glue this later. There's more area, surface area here to attach that tab. If I move the tab to the other side, and if this one was, oh, hold on. If this one wasn't there, you'll get, sometimes you'll have very thin pieces that tab will actually run over, and that creates a problem when you're trying to then connect this piece here, because you've got all these tabs in the way. Hitting Control Z for undo a bunch. So again, I'm primarily moving my tabs so that they're symmetrical and so that they're on the side of the edge with the thinner strip part. As I'm doing this, you're noticing this red line defining where the flap is coming from. You can always zoom out and check to see, but for the most part, you're just trying to make things symmetrical. And if we need to move them later, if they all need to move to the side of the opening, edge opening, if they need to move to the side that has the thinner piece, we can always do that later. We can make some minor adjustments in order to make the piece symmetrical. Sometimes the unfold will not be quite symmetrical, even though we've defined our surfaces. Here, since our tabs are so close together, we're actually going to move those to whatever their adjoining edge will be. We'll do the same thing here. So I'll see if I can, so these, as I'm noticing this, these are going from one side to the other. So what this is telling me, if I select these, that's that shared seam between the center. So we'll just leave those on one edge. Of that seam. When I get to stripped parts that end in these sharp points, I want to try to make, later on we're going to try to attach these to other strips, but I want the tab to be on the part with that pointed end. Same theory as moving. See, now I'm seeing this red line connecting to this thinner part, so I'm actually going to move these back. Same theory here on this corner piece as a piece with a thin strip. We want to have that tab on the piece that's thinner, or it ends in a point, because the other half is probably going to have more surface area in order to make our glue attachment when assembling the paper. What I'm going to do is try to speed up the video to show what I'm doing, and I don't think I need to explain too much while I'm running through and doing this. Okay, so now we have our preliminary parts layout set up to show us the symmetry.